all go through this process of learning about how the world works and believing that we've come up with some loophole, some hack, some way to generate wealth that doesn't require work or effort because we're so clever. And those old people over there just don't get it. Nothing is guaranteed. And whenever you have anybody who speaks with a degree of confidence that does not reflect the reality of the risk involved, beware. And that's just a cautionary tale from snake oil salesmen in history who have managed to convince people of things that weren't true. And that is not a qualitative statement of the value of the advice they give, or even a quantitative statement on the amount of profits you can earn in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. It is simply a request to be cautious and not to get too excited by the proclamations of people who are talking their own book, which means they are trying to convince you to put your money in an investment that will directly benefit them. Let's really get into the meat of the episode, and that is whether or not Bitcoin is a good investment or even whether it's an investment at all. Let's first start by defining what an investment is, because economists have a very specific meaning for that term, which differs from popular culture. The ability to withdraw a larger number from the number that you deposit is not the critical criteria for something to be considered an investment. An investment is not how much money you make, it's what the money does. Is that money that you have spent going to be used to create a new product, to create a new service, to do research? Is it going to build a factory to enable the production of goods? Or is it simply going to, sit in a drawer and wait to appreciate? Those are two very different things. And in the traditional economics world, investments create production. Investments serve a purpose. Investments make the world richer. Sticking cash underneath your mattress is not an investment. Buying art and hanging it on the wall is not an investment. Those are speculations. Now, the world has room for both of these things to coexist, but we should at least clearly articulate the distinction between the two. When you are making your investment, is that money going towards doing something productive? Is it creating value in the world, or is it just being stored in a mattress somewhere in the world waiting to appreciate? Are you building things, or are you trading numbers? So whenever somebody tries to sell you on an investment, make sure to always ask the question, what are you building? What are you creating? What is the good that you will add to the world? What are you using this money to do? So I think that makes my position fairly obvious. I don't consider buying and holding Bitcoins to be an investment, but that doesn't mean there aren't ways to invest in Bitcoin. There are a very large number of startups that have been funded by venture capitalists all over the world who are creating services that will hopefully benefit the larger community and happen to use Bitcoin to facilitate the delivery of those services. If any of these startups actually create a service that people use and value and are willing to pay for, they can generate income and they can return a portion of that income to the original investors who funded them. And now that's a real business. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is very different than buying and holding Bitcoin. Now, you might say, well, I don't know how to code. I can't create a startup. You might say, I'm not a VC. I don't have millions of dollars that I can throw around at a bunch of programmers who will create a startup. How can I invest in this new ecosystem? I believe that this technology is going to become meaningful and I want some way to profit from it. Well, life isn't always fair, quite frankly. I mean, you might also believe that, Elon Musk is going to be very successful with SpaceX and Starlink, but it's a private company, so you can't get in and you can't benefit from that either. That doesn't mean you can create a bunch of, rocket trinket tokens and hawk them online and claim that it's somehow correlated to the success of SpaceX. At least if you create those rocket trinkets in your backyard, they might be harmless, but Bitcoin is not harmless. Bitcoin actually has some pretty significant negative externalities. It's really an environmental catastrophe. The amount of electricity that is consumed just to keep this network up and running is astronomical. And for what? Remember, the point of an investment is to create value, not to destroy it. Here we have a Bitcoin network that is consuming resources and not providing a service that is meaningfully better than what it's trying to replace. Remember, when you create a new product, customers should be seeking what you create. Customers should be beating down your door saying, yes, you've identified a very real problem and your solution will help me make some money. It'll help me save some money. It'll help me make my life better. Who is pounding down the doors of these Bitcoin companies saying, give me your services now? Where are the vendors demanding that you pay them in Bitcoin, not in dollars? A ton of resources have been spent building out this entire ecosystem, and it isn't yet clear who is going to benefit from it. That doesn't mean these companies will never find customers for their services. It doesn't mean vendors will never demand Bitcoin. It doesn't mean speculators who are hoping to see a higher price from Bitcoin won't see that higher price and profit from it tremendously. It only means there is a ton of risk here. There is no certainty. There are no guarantees. So buyer beware. I just really wish that all of these entrepreneurs and investors and VCs, when they go and talk about Bitcoin in public, they would focus less on the price and more on the services, because the more they talk about price, the more this just looks like a Ponzi scheme. And Bitcoin is not going to succeed by just settling for being a bigger, richer, longer lasting, most successful Ponzi scheme in history. That is not what will return value for customers and profits for investors. What is going to create value and return profits is a service that people use, a solution that companies are willing to pay money for that solves a very real problem. And people need to focus more of their time and their energy on how much progress the community is making in that area, how many people are using Bitcoin services, as opposed to simply focusing exclusively on the price and declaring victory every time the price goes up. The more people focus on the price, the more it looks like a scam. The more people focus on the services, the more it looks like a real business. Another reason why this focus on price is incredibly disturbing to me is because we all know this market is unregulated. This market is incredibly volatile, not just because it's lacking in market cap. It's incredibly volatile because it is highly manipulated by people who are looking to extract as many dollars from retail investors as possible. All markets need to defend themselves against criminal actors. There is nothing special about the Bitcoin universe or the cryptocurrency universe that repels bad actors. If anything, it attracts them. And the lack of any sort of accountability, or quite frankly, it appears that many of the people advocating for Bitcoin as investment not only don't hold their peers accountable, if we want to consider this a self-regulating market, they cheer them on, because everybody benefits when the price goes up. Everybody in on the scam profits when they convince new investors to add money into the pile that ultimately they are going to loot. Just think for a moment, if some of these predictions of Bitcoin's future market cap becomes real, do you actually believe that every single person who put in $1,000 that is now $1 million will actually be able to extract that $1 million from their Bitcoin wallets and spend them in the real economy? Can everybody get out all of their money? Obviously, that won't be possible. And one last point about price, because again, going back to the traditional economics view of the world, prices are not just numbers. They're not just whatever somebody is willing to pay for a particular good or service. A price is a signal. A price is a variable that helps producers of those products and services understand the demand. It helps them determine how to allocate their investments to produce more of that good or service. And the problem in the Bitcoin community is there isn't a relationship between the price of Bitcoin and the use of Bitcoin services. So it is really providing a false signal to investors who believe that they have stumbled upon the next great market, when in reality, the only reason people are buying Bitcoins is because their friends bought Bitcoin and they have a fear of missing out on this massive wealth creating tidal wave. Their goal is not to buy Bitcoin to use it. The goal is to sell it to someone else for a higher price. And this is a very significant market distortion, which is confusing a lot of people and creating, in my opinion, some economic loss because investments are not being allocated effectively. If the purpose of a free market economy is to maximize the efficient allocation of resources, we are not doing that. And it is the misallocation of resources that, at the end of the day, is the primary cause of any bubble.